The next green sign listed a destination I had forgotten until that moment. My headlights slid across the reflective letters just long enough for the name to flare bright and vanish again into the fog. Millhaven, 12 miles. For a moment my brain refused to recognize it. The name hung somewhere in the back of my mind like a word on the tip of my tongue. My tires hummed steadily along the damp asphalt, the rhythm steady and hypnotic, but my hands tightened on the steering wheel. Millhaven. The fog rolled low over the road, glowing faintly in the beams of my headlights. I checked the rearview mirror out of habit. Nothing behind me but darkness and pale mist folding over the highway. I hadn't seen another car for almost an hour. The road curved slightly. My headlights flickered across the reflective paint of the lane markers and then settled again. Millhaven. The memory came slowly, like something surfacing from deep water. I had been there once. When I was a kid. The engine hummed steadily beneath me. I turned the radio knob to break the silence, but the speakers only spat thin static that rose and fell like distant breathing. I turned it off again. Another green sign emerged from the fog ahead. It appeared suddenly, as if the road had placed it there when I wasn't looking. My headlights caught it. Millhaven, 9 miles. That wasn't right. The last sign had said 12. I hadn't driven 3 miles. I glanced down at the odometer. The numbers confirmed it. Barely 1 mile had passed. The tires whispered against the wet pavement. For a moment I considered that maybe I had misread the first sign. But the name itself stirred something heavier than a simple mistake. Millhaven. A place I had not thought about in 20 years. And a place I had never meant to remember again. The fog thickened ahead, drifting across the highway in slow-moving layers. The beams of my headlights broke into scattered halos. The road felt strangely narrow now, the darkness pressing closer on both sides. Another fragment of memory surfaced. A lake, still water, wooden docks rotting along the shoreline, and a boy standing beside me. I shook my head slightly, trying to push the thought away. The hum of the engine seemed louder now, vibrating through the steering wheel into my palms. We had been maybe 10 years old. His name hovered just beyond reach. The highway stretched empty ahead, but something about the darkness beyond the shoulders of the road felt wrong. The trees seemed too close. Their branches leaned inward, black against the fog. Another sign appeared. This time the letters were duller, older. The reflective coating had faded. Millhaven, 7 miles. Below it, scratched faintly into the metal, was something else. A smaller line of text. My headlights slid over it for only a second, but it was enough. Welcome back. I felt my stomach tighten. That wasn't a standard highway marking, and it hadn't been there a moment before. The tires hummed faster as I pressed the accelerator slightly, instinctively wanting to put distance between myself and the sign. But the fog swallowed the road so completely that speeding only made the darkness feel closer. The memory returned in pieces. The lake again. A wooden pier. And laughter. Mine. And someone else's. A boy with dark hair and a red jacket. Evan. That was his name. The moment I remembered it, the radio crackled suddenly to life. Static surged through the speakers, then a thin, distorted voice. For a second I thought it was a broadcast. Then I realized it sounded like a recording. Children laughing. My hands tightened on the wheel. The road ahead shifted slightly. I blinked, unsure whether it had actually moved or if the fog had simply changed shape. The asphalt looked older, cracked in places. The lane markers faded. I slowed the car. Another sign appeared ahead. This one was crooked, leaning slightly to one side. Moss clung to its metal post. Millhaven, 5 miles. But the text beneath it had changed. Lake Road. My throat tightened. That was the road leading to the lake. The one from the memory. I hadn't thought about that road since the day everything went wrong. The fog swirled thicker now, brushing against the windshield like breath. The headlights flickered briefly, dimming and brightening again. I noticed something else. The roadside reflectors had changed. Instead of modern markers, there were old wooden posts with faded white paint. The kind that hadn't been used in decades. The road wasn't just leading toward Millhaven. It was becoming it. My heart beat harder. I hadn't been back since the summer Evan disappeared. Even thinking the word felt strange. Disappeared. That's what everyone had said. But the memory in my mind didn't use that word. It used another one. I drove slower now, the tires whispering softly against the damp pavement. Another sign emerged from the fog. Closer. Too close. Millhaven, 2 miles. But the text below it made my breath catch. Evans Point. I stared at the letters. They weren't reflective highway paint. They looked carved, like someone had scratched them in with a knife. The radio crackled again. This time the laughter was clearer. 2 children running across wood planks. Water slapping gently against a dock. My headlights swept across the road ahead and illuminated something strange. The asphalt ended. Not abruptly, but gradually. It faded into an older road. Gravel. I slowed the car to a crawl. The fog opened slightly and revealed a narrow wooden sign beside the road. No reflective paint. Just peeling white letters. Lake Road. The memory slammed into place all at once. The dock. The red jacket. Evan standing at the edge of the water. And me pushing him. Not hard. Just playing. Just enough that he lost his balance. He had fallen into the lake. I remembered waiting for him to surface. I remembered the silence. And then the fear. I had run home and told no one. The adults searched for days. But the lake was deep, cold, and Evan was never found. The engine idled quietly now. The fog parted further ahead. And there it was. The lake. Still. Black. Exactly as it had been 20 years ago. A wooden dock stretched into the water. And someone stood at the end of it. Small. Still. My headlights trembled slightly across the figure. A red jacket. The radio went silent. The tires stopped humming as I eased off the brake and let the car roll slowly down the gravel road. The closer I got, the more details emerged. The dock looked exactly the same. The broken plank near the edge. The crooked post where we used to tie a rope swing. The figure didn't move. Just waited. I stopped the car. The engine idled softly. For a long moment nothing happened. Then the figure turned. And the fog shifted just enough for me to see his face. Evan. Exactly as he had looked that summer. 10 years old. Wet hair clinging to his forehead. Eyes reflecting the headlights. He raised one arm slowly. Not waving. Pointing. Behind me. I turned instinctively. The highway was gone. The gravel road had vanished. In its place stood a green highway sign. Its metal surface gleamed in my headlights. But the text was different now. Not a distance marker. Just a single line. Millhaven. And beneath it, residents only. The engine sputtered suddenly and died. The headlights flickered once. Then went dark. In the silence that followed, I heard something move behind the car. Soft footsteps on damp gravel. Approaching slowly. I turned in the seat. And through the rear window, faintly visible in the fog, I saw another car parked behind mine. Same make, same model. Its headlights were on. And inside, sitting in the driver's seat, was me, hands on the wheel, staring forward at the lake. Waiting, just like I had been. My headlights caught a figure standing on the median, but it didn't face the road. For a second the light washed over the shape and flattened it into something unreal, like a cardboard cutout dropped into the fog. Then the car surged past and darkness swallowed it again. I checked the mirror instinctively. Nothing. Just the wet highway stretching behind me. Lane reflectors glowing faintly in the mist before disappearing into blackness. The hum of the tires filled the car, steady and low. Water hissed beneath the wheels where the pavement was slick with condensation. The fog ahead thickened and thinned in slow waves, drifting across the beams of my headlights. I exhaled slowly. Maybe it had been a signpost, or a mile marker. Except signs don't stand in the median with shoulders. And they don't turn their backs to the road. I adjusted my grip on the steering wheel and focused ahead. The highway was empty. No taillights in the distance. No oncoming headlights cutting through the fog. Just 2 lanes of damp asphalt and the quiet mechanical drone of the engine. The memory of the figure lingered anyway. It had been standing perfectly still in the strip of gravel and grass dividing the lanes, facing away from traffic, facing the darkness beyond the guardrail, not moving, not reacting to the sudden blast of light, as if it hadn't noticed the car at all, or as if it had been watching something else. I drove another mile before realizing something was wrong. The median ahead looked identical. Same narrow band of grass, same broken reflectors, and then my headlights swept across it again. The figure was there, standing in exactly the same posture, back turned, head tilted slightly downward. I slowed instinctively. The tires hummed lower now, the sound flattening as the car lost speed. For a moment I wondered if I had somehow looped back along the same stretch of road. But the odometer ticked upward steadily. The road signs were different, yet the figure remained, as if the highway had brought me back to it. I passed it again. This time the headlights illuminated more detail. A coat, dark, hanging straight, arms at its sides. The head bent forward slightly, as though listening. Not to the road, to something in the darkness beyond the guardrail. I glanced sideways as I drove past. The figure didn't move. The fog swallowed it immediately. My pulse quickened. The rearview mirror reflected empty pavement for several seconds. Then something flickered in the glass. I leaned forward slightly. The figure stood in the mirror now, still in the median, still facing away. But it looked closer than it should have been. I turned around in my seat. Nothing behind me, just fog and damp asphalt. When I looked back at the mirror, the figure was gone. The radio crackled softly, filling the car with a whisper of static. I hadn't touched it. The sound rose and fell like distant breathing. I reached to turn it off. Before my hand reached the dial, the speakers produced a thin murmur. Not words exactly, more like someone speaking quietly in another room. The voice faded before I could make out anything. The highway curved slightly to the right. My headlights slid across a reflective road sign. Speed limit 65. Except the numbers looked wrong. Reversed, like the sign had been flipped toward the median, facing the figure, not the road. I slowed further. The fog thickened suddenly, rolling across the pavement in low bands that caught the headlights and turned the air milky white. The hum of the tires became the loudest thing in the world. Then the median appeared again, and the figure was there, still facing away, still listening. But now its head was tilted slightly higher, as if the sound of my engine had finally reached it. A cold feeling settled in my chest. 3 times. 3 separate stretches of road. And the same unmoving figure. I passed it again, slower now. The headlights illuminated the back of its neck. Pale. Too pale. The coat shifted slightly in the wind of my passing car. And I realized something strange. The posture felt familiar. The slight slope of the shoulders. The way the head leaned forward when listening carefully. I knew that stance. I had seen it before. I drove another mile before the memory surfaced. Not from a road. From a lake. Late afternoon sunlight reflecting off still water. A wooden dock, and someone standing at the edge. Back turned. Looking down. Listening. I tightened my grip on the wheel. The radio whispered again. This time the sound was clearer. Water moving slowly. Soft ripples touching wood. My headlights flickered once. When they steadied again, the highway looked different. The asphalt was darker. Older. The reflectors along the median were gone. Just grass. And fog. The median widened ahead. And the figure stood there again. But now it was closer to the road. Only a few feet from the lane. The same posture. Head bowed slightly. Listening. Waiting. I slowed to a crawl as I approached. The tires rolled quietly across the wet pavement. For a moment I thought the figure was whispering. The sound was too faint to hear clearly. But the shoulders moved slightly, as if breathing. My headlights washed over it fully. The coat, the hair, the height. Every detail matched a memory I had spent years avoiding. The figure belonged to a boy. 14 years old, standing at the edge of a dock. The last time I had seen him, the car crept past, and just as the headlights slid away, the boy's head turned slightly. Not toward me, toward the road behind me, like he was following the car with his hearing instead of his eyes. I drove another 100 yards before my hands started shaking. The radio crackled again. This time the whisper was unmistakable. My name, spoken softly, from the back seat. I whipped around. No one there. When I faced forward again, the road had changed. The median was gone. The highway had narrowed into a single damp lane. And standing in the middle of it, facing away, was the same figure. Only now it stood exactly where my headlights ended, blocking the road. I slammed the brakes. The tires screeched briefly before gripping the wet asphalt. The car stopped 20 feet from the boy. He stood perfectly still, head tilted, listening again, to something beyond the guardrail, beyond the fog. I stared at the back of his head, at the familiar shoulders, at the same jacket he had worn that night, the night by the lake, the night I had pushed him off the dock, the night he never came back up. The boy slowly raised one hand and pointed toward the darkness beyond the road, toward the water I couldn't see but somehow knew was there. Then, very slowly, he began to turn. The headlights flickered. My breath caught, because I already knew what his face would look like. I had seen it before, every time I closed my eyes. But when the boy finally faced the car, the face in the headlights wasn't his. It was mine, wet, pale, eyes open and staring. Exactly the way the lake had shown me the night I leaned over the dock. The night I looked down into the water and saw my reflection watching him sink.